And so this is what creates the dark night of the soul, is the contradiction. He comes to understand, hey, it's not a matter of whether God exists or not, it's whether do I exist or not. So this really causes an existential life crisis. You're going to have a realization, and that realization is either going to be a major explosion in your life, or it's going to be a firecracker, or in some cases it's going to be a dud. And that the Buddhist religion is what has come to the West, not the Buddha's Dhamma. Approach, meet, and conquer every defilement with a big smile on his face.
Yeah, so no, there's been this back and forth between these kind of two schools of thought. One is that the dark night is almost an inevitability, and the other is that the dark night, it's not really a problem. It doesn't really happen if you do things basically the way that things traditionally had been done before dry insight practices.
All right.
Yeah. So
what's your question?
Well, I mean, I think you already answered it, which is that it isn't a problem to be worried about, basically.
All right. It's actually worth a short talk about. I've run across this actually many, many years ago, so it's not a new idea or phenomena. And in fact, we should look at what the dark night of the soul actually was. It was coming from a dude named St. John of the Cross. And that the most recent example of it is Mother Teresa. They finally published her memoirs, and I think that it so surprised the Catholics that they were willing to take her beatitude or beatification away from her, because she was in the dark night of the soul, and it lasted for years. Now, what the dark night of the soul is in Christianity is when one of the clerics comes to realize that who they thought God was is not what they find. And it's a big idea of disappointment. Now, the problem within the church itself is that the dark night of the soul is something that someone realizes on their own, but it goes against the teachings of the church. And therefore, because it goes against the teachings of the church, they have no legitimate avenue for recourse. They can't go talk to their preceptor or their abbot or whatever like that and get justification for pursuing this position, because it's antithetical to the teachings of the church. And so this is what creates the dark night of the soul, is the contradiction.
Okay.
All right. So that contradiction is, who am I in relationship to the God that I thought existed, who now has proven that he does not exist in the way that I have identified with? Okay. For instance, a loving God, or a secret friend, or some kind of other thing like this. Or it often also happens with theologians and those who really study the Bible. Seminary professors, in fact, often have this, because when they come to understand what the Bible is actually teaching, they are in conflict with what they were taught about the Bible in school, in childhood, or everything up until, in fact, everything that's taught about the Bible to everyone in English language versus what the Bible is in ancient Greek. That's basically the difference.
Okay.
and that those students who go far enough into the Bible study begin to understand that the foundations of the church, whatever church it is that I belong to, are not supported in the Bible that I can read correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So that also causes a dark night of the soul, but in that case, the dark night of the soul is real. Because if a preacher who is in the pulpit every week comes to understand that his church and all the teachings and everything is bullshit, then how can he continue in the pulpit? The answer is they all try for a while, because they know the downside of it is they're probably going to lose their job. They're probably going to lose their house. They're probably going to lose their wife and family, all over ideology. Okay, and so people who are caught in that kind of predicament are going to have a lot of feelings of internal conflict, etc., like that. But here's this interesting thing, is that this dark night of the soul that has been throughout history common within the Christian community actually doesn't deal with a problem as deep as the Buddhists do. So one would naturally think that if the Buddhists are going to deal with even a deeper problem, then they're going to have even a darker night of the soul. All right? So here's the deeper problem. The problem is not whether God exists or not in relationship to me. The real question is, do I exist? Because if I don't exist, then gods are irrelevant. I don't need them at all. Thank you very much. In fact, their existence is irrelevant. Because if they don't have a soul to kick around, then the God is completely useless. You see, one of the qualities of existence has to do with viability or provability. And when it's taught in the Catholic Church or in Hinduism, the law of karma, you will eventually get your retribution. That you just wait until you die and then God's really going to do a number on you, right? So this is the whole idea of putting things off because we have no control of the moment, of here now. Now, where this is going is that when you realize that there is in fact no soul, then that means that not only is God incapable of being detected now, he will also be impossible to detect after I'm dead. But the Christian idea is, he's undetectable now, but after I die, I'll get a reward. I'll have my evidence that God does exist. I'll have my place in heaven, etc., like that. So, in the dark night of the soul with the Christians, all they really have to deal with, if there is no God, is, okay, well, now how do I live my life, etc. But when the Buddhist student starts to delve deeply into personality view, he comes to understand, hey, it's not a matter of whether God exists or not, it's whether do I exist or not. So this really causes an existential life crisis. And some people have it, especially if they have the realization before they're ready to have it. And in most cases, a lot of groundwork is laid for the students to get ready and get prepared. You're going to have a realization, and that realization is either going to be a major explosion in your life, or it's going to be a firecracker, or in some cases it's going to be a dud. Depends upon how much preparation is done. Normally, this is also sometimes associated with the Japanese Zen version of a satori. The satori is that awakening to who am I? or it's the awakening that at least I see enough of who I am to recognize I am not what I thought I was. Haven't quite figured out what it is yet, but it ain't what I thought. Okay. And so that realization or that satori can either be a big one or a small one, depending upon how well the student is prepared for it. And so it's the job of a meditation teacher to prepare students to see this. And in fact, all of the teachings of the Buddha is around this in the sense of the Four Noble Truths. The first thing that we recognize is that the cause of suffering is greed, ill will, and delusion. And it's not out there delusion. It's not greed out there. It's not ill will out there. It's greed, ill will, and delusion here in one's own mind. That eventually starts the process of looking within. And one of the things that we discover is that the human mind is a process. And the process that it does is called pattern recognition. A lot of humans think that they're truth-seeking machines, but no, we're only pattern-matching machines. That's why it's so easy to get people to believe a lie. All you have to do is repeat it over and over again. A pattern sets up, and people will believe it because it fits their pattern. Well, when you come to the realization that you are not what you thought you were, that means that all of your patterns are wrong. And we begin to recognize that not only are they wrong now because I can see them, they've always been wrong, and that's why I've been suffering so much. And so the dark night of the soul really doesn't have the kind of sting or the results that the dark night of the soul that Christians have. And so I'm finding it a little surprising that it was ever put on to Buddhism that there's a dark night of the soul, because I don't see it. Not only that, but I've never seen it in any particular student, and I've met a lot of nobles who have come through that process unscarred.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like that the ones that have the most trouble with it are the ones who come from the Burmese tradition. And that the Burmese tradition and the Sri Lankan tradition have much greater affinity and association with the commentaries and the works of Buddhaghosa, and that form of Buddhism has given rise to what I call the Buddhist religion, and that the Buddhist religion is what has come to the West, not the Buddha's Dhamma.
Okay.
So, in that regard, with Mahasi coming west and all of that whole tradition of that, for instance, the teaching in the Visuddhimagga is that Paticca takes 3 lifetimes.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about 3 physical lifetimes: a life in the past before you were born, the life that you're holding now, and then after you're dead, you're going to have some future life. That's the way that Paticca is broken down in an eternalistic or semi-eternalistic way of thinking, which is very Hindu. In fact, Hinduism and Christianity work very well together. All you have to do is change a few labels. The easiest label is to take the word God off of the machine and put the word Kama on that machine. Okay, and you've got a big Kama machine going there that operates on souls. And its job is to kick them around. But not where it can be seen. It has to be done magically somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, this idea of the Paticca being 3 lifetimes actually has some truth in it, because the 3 lifetimes are not 3 physical lifetimes, but they're merely the 3 lifetimes that you're experiencing all the time: past, present, and future. At this moment, we have a new past, a new present, a new future, and that the past accumulates and the future continues to be murky. No matter how much stuff we put into the future, it still stays empty. And then we have the present moment. When we understand how that present moment works within the Paticca, In fact, we begin to see that the mind is actually a process. It's not an entity that goes from life to life to life. Therefore, those Buddhists who come through their own observation and their own vipassana will then come up against the teachings that they have on 3 lifetimes and rebirth and all of this other stuff. All right, so in that kind of case, you can see that some Buddhists have the same problem that the Christians do, is that what I actually observe and what I can actually see and what I can actually come to understand about who I am does not fit with the model I've been taught.
Mm-hmm.
And that can cause a dark night, but it's an artificial dark night because the teachings are wrong. Now, there's one little further thing that can be said about that, and that is that teachers have a great deal to do with, through expectations and other things, with what happens with students. So if a teacher makes sure that his teaching is such that the fallback position is a joyful, happy position, then that's going to ultimately be a different teaching than the fallback position of the teaching is, oh, you're going to have to go through hell. You're going to have to go through the dark night of the soul. You're really going to suffer. And not only that, but the teacher's thinking that that's going to happen, he'll set it up so that it does.
Mm-hmm.
Through his language and his speech and other things like this. So those teachers who say that they believe that there is a dark night of the soul in Buddhism, or a dark night of the self, or whatever, and that you've got to go through it and it's going to be hugely miserable, that's a really good reason to stay away from that teacher.
Yeah.
But if the teacher says, oh, well, coming to the understanding personality view that you're not who you thought you were, then in fact, the whole rest of your life is now going to be spent in the discovery of actually who you are, knowing that it's going to be changing every minute, so you're going to have to keep track of it all the time. Okay, when we recognize that, we can say, hot diggity dog, now I've got something to do. But the dark night of the soul kind of teaching is, woe is me, how can I ever get out of this?
Mm-hmm.
So the dark night of the soul is actually a teaching that causes suffering and then puts the students in it to suffer. And then they can write all kinds of literature about dark nights of the soul and how it's inevitable and all kinds of stuff like that. But what has happened is it's all a major case of confirmation bias.
Uh-huh.
All right, so you know who the names are of all of the teachers. We don't have to go in and talk about who's saying what, but you know which side of the fence the sutras fall on, because the sutras don't mention anything about having a dark night of the soul or any such description at all. What the sutras talk about is good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end, mm-hmm. when it's taught with the right terminology and phrasing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the teaching of the Buddha. It's actually good in the beginning. And that's an important quality to look for, because if there comes a point in time when it is not good, when your practice is not good, when you're struggling with it, what that means is you're doing something wrong. Because in all cases, if you're practicing correctly, the outcome is going to be a good outcome. It's going to be beneficial, wholesome, and it's going to be seen as beneficial and wholesome and enjoyed as beneficial and wholesome. And if you get stuck in some mystery place, some crowd, some disillusion, I can't stand society kind of thing like that, then perhaps the missing ingredient is a bit of compassion.
Mm-hmm.
But in all cases, there is no time or space where any practitioner of the Buddha Dhamma should, in fact, not approach, meet, and conquer every defilement with a big smile on his face. At no time should we try to attack and work with a defilement that we've already decided is the winner of the contest, and I'm the loser. I'm the victim, and I'm a victim of my own creation. That's wrong practice.
Mm-hmm.
The right practice is you're a lion, you're a champion,
Mm-hmm.
and that you can handle this stuff. No dark nights of the soul for the lions. They enjoy themselves all night long.
Yeah.
All right, is that a deeper answer to the question then?
Yeah. No, I mean, I figured that was where you were coming from. I just kind of wanted to confirm that was. um. Yeah. Would you like to? I mean, I'm surprised I'm still awake, but do you want to continue where we left off, or do you want to call it a?
No, let's call this a night for you,
Okay.
because this is a good way of answering one question and putting this out as just this is one statement.
Okay.
Dark night of the soul is wrong practice.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. We'll see you later, Dan.
All right. Bye.
Okay, good night.